He-imposing warcruiser Dominion's Edge hung in Earth's orbit like a metallic thundercloud, its hull bristling with enough weaponry to glass continents. Ambassador Zexthul of the Hegemony straightened his ceremonial robes as the shuttle descended toward the United Nations headquarters in New Geneva. This would be simple. Deliver the ultimatum, watch the primitive mammals cower, and return home with another conquered world added to the Galactic Council's ever-expanding territory. The humans had been observed for 3 solar cycles since their first crude radio signals reached Council space. A young species, barely past their nuclear age, squabbling among themselves over resources and tribal boundaries. The preliminary reports painted them as aggressive but disorganized. Perfect subjects for subjugation. Zexthul's 4 eyes narrowed as he reviewed the intimidation protocol one final time. The formula had worked flawlessly across 17 previous conquests. Arrive with overwhelming force, demonstrate superior technology, present impossible demands, then graciously offer protection in exchange for total submission. The newly contacted species always chose survival over pride. The human delegation waited in what they called the General Assembly Hall. Zexthul noted with satisfaction how small and fragile they appeared, bipedal creatures with soft skin and no natural weapons. Their leader, Secretary General Elena Rodriguez, stood barely half his height. Behind her sat representatives from their various tribal nations, their primitive suits and ties a laughable attempt at formal wear. Inhabitants of the 3rd planet, Zexthul began, his translator implant rendering his words into their crude languages simultaneously. You stand before the might of the Galactic Hegemony Council. We have observed your species and found you adequate for integration into our empire. The expected gasps and trembling did not come. Instead, several humans exchanged glances, and Secretary General Rodriguez stepped forward with what appeared to be genuine curiosity. Welcome to Earth, Ambassador. We appreciate you making the journey. Though I have to ask, did you really bring that massive warship just to have a conversation? That seems a bit excessive. Zexthul's confidence wavered slightly. Excessive? The Dominion's Edge was a masterpiece of military engineering, designed to strike terror into the hearts of lesser species. The vessel represents but a fraction of our fleet's power. Your compliance with our terms will determine whether peaceful integration. Oh, we're definitely interested in peaceful integration, Rodriguez interrupted, her tone remaining remarkably cheerful. But first, would you like some coffee? You've traveled such a long way. The ambassador's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. Coffee? He consulted his mental database. A mild stimulant beverage. Was this some sort of primitive peace offering, a desperate attempt to appease their obvious superiors? We do not require your crude sustenance, he declared, trying to regain his intimidating momentum. You will surrender your military forces, dismantle your governments, and prepare for immediate relocation of your population to designated labor worlds. The silence that followed was not the terrified hush Zexthul expected. Instead, it was the kind of quiet that precedes laughter. And then it came. Not from one human, but from dozens. Secretary General Rodriguez covered her mouth, shoulders, shaking with barely suppressed mirth. The Japanese representative openly chuckled. The delegate from Brazil wiped tears from his eyes. I'm sorry, Rodriguez managed between giggles, but did you just suggest relocating 8 billion people? Do you have any idea how much paperwork that would involve? Our bureaucracy can barely handle passport renewals. More laughter rippled through the assembly. The representative from Canada stood up, still grinning. Ambassador, with respect, have you actually looked at our planet? We can't agree on standardizing electrical outlets, and you think we're going to coordinate a species-wide surrender? Zexthul felt his intimidation protocol crumbling. This was not how conquered species behaved. Where was the fear, the desperate bargaining, the inevitable submission? You do not comprehend the gravity of your situation, he growled, his voice, amplifier increasing volume. Our weapons can reduce your cities to atoms, our fleet's number in the thousands. Your resistance is futile. The German delegate leaned forward, adjusting his glasses with academic interest. Fascinating. You've mastered faster-than-light travel, energy weapons, and interstellar communication, but you still think the best way to make friends is by threatening them. That's actually quite primitive, psychologically speaking. Friends? Zexthul sputtered. We are not here to make friends, we are here to— To what exactly? Rodriguez asked, her laughter fading into genuine curiosity. Look around you, Ambassador. This is how we settle disputes. Talking, arguing, sometimes shouting, but ultimately finding solutions together. You brought a warship to a discussion. That tells us more about your civilization than any technology demonstration ever could. The British representative stood, clearing his throat politely. If I may, Ambassador, your approach seems rather— Well, last century, we tried the whole might makes right thing. Didn't work out terribly well for anyone involved. Your species fights constantly, Zexthul protested, consulting his datapad. Our scouts documented numerous conflicts, territorial disputes, resource wars. Oh, we're definitely not perfect, Rodriguez acknowledged with a shrug. But we're learning. And one thing we've learned is that lasting peace doesn't come from fear. It comes from mutual respect and shared benefit. So here's a counter-proposal. Instead of conquering us, why don't you tell us about yourselves? What does your species need? What problems are you trying to solve? The question caught Zexthul completely off guard. In 300 cycles of conquest, no species had ever asked what the hegemony needed. They simply cowered, submitted, and were absorbed into the Empire's endless hunger for resources and labor. We require mineral resources, agricultural products, and workforce expansion, he found himself admitting. Well, why didn't you just say so? The Australian representative laughed. We're brilliant at trade agreements, absolutely love them. We'll argue about the details for months, it's half the fun. Rodriguez nodded enthusiastically. We have mining operations, agricultural surpluses, and plenty of people who'd love to work in space, as employees, not slaves. Partners, not subjects. But the intimidation protocol, Zexthul began weakly, hasn't worked once since you got here, Rodriguez pointed out gently. Maybe it's time to try something new? As Zexthul looked around the assembly hall, he saw something that challenged everything he thought he knew about conquest. These humans weren't cowering because they weren't afraid, not in the way his species understood fear. They were genuinely curious about these strange visitors from the stars, eager to learn and share despite the obvious power imbalance. For the first time in his long career of subjugation, Ambassador Zexthul found himself wondering if there might be another way. Perhaps the humans' laughter wasn't mockery of his threats. Perhaps it was an invitation to discover what lay beyond them. Tell me about this coffee, he said finally, his 4 shoulders sagging in something that might have been relief. And perhaps we can discuss terms. The laughter that filled the hall this time was warm, welcoming, and utterly without fear. Somewhere in the depths of space, the Dominion's Edge powered down its weapon systems, no longer needed for a conversation, that had become something entirely unprecedented, the beginning of friendship between species. The Galactic Council had tried to intimidate Earth. The humans had answered with laughter, curiosity, and an offer to share coffee. And somehow, that response had proven more powerful than any weapon the galaxy had ever known.